Welcome to Do What Matters Most. This is episode 10 in the series Great Leaders. Great leaders are skillful with groups of people and with individuals. Both of these important abilities are useful when it comes to resolving conflict, chaotic conditions, and other forms of alienation people feel for one another. This type of discord often results in low performance and the loss of good people who leave organizations to find something better. Establishing peace is one of the least prominent qualities of great leaders, but it is emerging as one of the most important.
Sometimes people think of leaders as someone who stands in front of people, make presentations that inspire and motivate. But as it turns out, great leaders are also very good in a private setting where they're dealing with small groups of people or individuals. And one of their purposes, that is the difference between a great leader and a leader that is not so great, is their ability to resolve conflict or discord or make order out of chaos or something else in order for people to feel good about their situation and in order for them to be the most productive. So in addition to success at work, people want to fill their lives with other important ingredients. One of these is best known as peace. In this case, peace refers to the set of conditions which permit people to feel comfortable with each other, feel in harmony with oneself, and work in greatest effectiveness with one another. Since it produces so much that is good, this form of peace is worth examining. Well, why? Because great leaders are good at establishing peace. We live at a time when many people cannot find peace inside themselves, peace in their families, peace at work, peace in their communities, in politics and government, or in international relations. In fact, some believe that people are so divided and the gulf between them so great that peaceful relationships between people may not be possible, at least for any length of time. And further, many more people come to work or live in communities who have not fully experienced the conditions of peace and are less confident that it is real because they've not lived with it. The absence of peace makes it much more difficult for people to trust others, to work effectively with them, and to live productive lives. You may wonder how the idea of peace is related to leadership, and especially to business. There are many areas where it can be applied. For one thing, when people live without inner peace, they are less able to perform well. They live where peace is felt irregularly and like a small time bomb. It is often only a matter of time until greater turmoil results. And when individuals cannot live at peace with members of their families or others, the practical consequences can be seen in emotional pain and reduced health, which often results in increased cost to their company and the potential loss of commitment. When co-workers do not live in peace, they do not unite, and the conflict between them and others becomes a chronic feature of the workplace. The negative impact on their attempts to achieve important business productivity or conditions, such as, say, customer service, is often immediate and significant. When governments do not live at peace, the resulting disharmony affects their economies and often indirectly creates a more negative climate. Conditions become even worse, and conflict perpetuates when some other people see the lack of peace between warring parties and then seek to take advantage of one or both. For these and other reasons, we should consider both the conditions necessary for peace and the conditions necessary to achieve peace from conflict. This will enable us to exert those leadership skills which allow us to establish peace, that is, preventing potential problems and eliminating conflict where it now exists. It will probably not surprise you to learn that these conditions are the same for individuals, married, couples, families, co-workers, and governments. So let's examine something about individual choice, to help, to ignore, or to hurt. Many researchers have reported that humans are born with a basic tendency to respond positively to one another. Suppose you see someone who stumbles and falls. According to this idea, your innate response would be to help that person. Because of this, you are faced with a choice, and you can use this to help others more often than you ignore or hurt someone. In contrast, examine two well-known groups of people. Islamic terrorists and Nazis have at least one thing in common. They both exist or existed in a social and cultural background where people believe they have limited opportunities to choose. Islamic people believe Allah has laid out the course of events and the desirable course of action. The only choice is to do or not do what is commanded. Nazis were taught that individual choice was restricted because anyone in authority was more responsible, and individual initiative was believed to be a sign of insubordination. The road to peace begins with the idea that people make choices about what they do to other people. Your choice may appear as something definite that you think long and hard about. It may be a mild impression, a small sensitivity, or a fleeting impulse. In any of these cases, the recognition that you make choices and are asked to choose is the foundation of efforts to create peace. This is followed by the idea that the choice you make is related to your response to other people. You can choose between the desire to help or care for someone, to ignore or be indifferent to them, and/or to actively harm them. Our lives are filled with these choices wherever we are around people. And as an example, you may have an opportunity to help a coworker learn a better strategy of succeeding, or choose not to help because you're afraid he will gain advantage. Another choice may result from conditions while you're driving. Still another may happen during a marriage conversation or at a Little League football game. We need to justify peace in our own minds and recognize that it requires that we take a small risk, but believe in big consequences. It is well known that we learn from our relationships with people. Where peace is concerned, our experience with people results in 4 perspectives or points of view. These include our view of ourselves, how we view others, our feelings, and our view of the world. More specifically, these 4 perspectives are influenced by the choices we make when we're with other people. For instance, if you choose to help someone, you are operating on the idea that helping is a small risk, which you hope will bring about positive results for yourself or someone else. Doing this repeatedly creates the following perspectives. View of self. I am worthwhile, competent, confident, and assured. So if you wanted to invite all to learn how to do that, you would invite people to be helpful to one another. So when someone has chosen to be of help to others, then how do they tend to view them? Well, they view them as people who are respectable, interesting, cooperative, and have integrity. 3, what about people's feelings or your feelings? People who do this tend to be confident, calmer, happier, peaceful, and fulfilled. And 4, what is the view of the world when somebody operates on the premise that helping people is an important value? These individuals tend to be optimistic, they believe problems are solvable, they see opportunities, and they believe in expanding and growing. Subsequently, then, when these 4 perspectives exist in this fashion, they become a roadmap for future relationships with others, and one's life then is more likely to be filled with both inner peace and peace with other people. This is the positive or optimal condition. We could also examine what happens when this is not the case. So, what does happen when you choose to ignore, choose to injure someone, or your own experience include being injured by others? In their book, The Anatomy of Peace, the authors at the Arbinger Institute propose that individuals have a natural interest, sense, or desire when it comes to choosing how to respond to people. Therefore, when a person chooses not to help someone or help himself, it is like a betrayal of self and it must be explained or justified. Because helping is innate, when we have the choice and choose to not help, we have to explain it. To illustrate, suppose a person does something to injure himself. He will need to justify or explain the reasons for this to himself. In another instance, suppose someone at work is in need of something and you ignore him or her. You will justify or explain to yourself why help was not given. In either of these 2 cases, people do not learn the conditions for peace. Instead, they are likely to develop the following. Their view of themselves is this: I don't know how to create positive conditions with people, and might need to avoid or limit my contact with others, especially in some situations. What is their view of others? Other people cannot be trusted to do positive things, and so I seldom notice the constructive things other people do. What are their feelings? loneliness, vulnerability, frustration, and over-anxiety. What is their view of the world? Well, the world's complex, often negative and harmful, and perhaps incomprehensible. Now, when people choose to ignore or hurt someone, they justify in their own minds what they do to soften their guilt. But in the process, they develop feelings and ideas about people that make them objects rather than human beings. For example, during World War II, Japanese men were America's enemies. Americans called them Japs and slant eyes to make them objects so they could be killed without much guilt. In race relations, people without peace perpetuate their bias by forming categories of discrimination, by referring to people only on the basis of some object cue or something they can observe, such as skin color or some other ethnic characteristic. Many employees label or refer to coworkers by a nickname referring to their mannerisms like big lips or frantic Phil. In this process, people stop thinking of this person in any other way than the name all agree to use. Now, once a person thinks about people as objects, these thoughts are organized into 4 fairly stable perspectives or attitudes that perpetually lead to problems, stalemates, or conflicts. When these 4 attitudes or perspectives exist, people not only experience more conflict within themselves and in their relationships, but they actually create or invest in conflict. That is, they not only fail to create peace, but they participate with other people in a way that perpetuates conflict. We will also see that the existence of these negative perspectives often precede bad behavior such as lying, cheating, mistreatment of others, malingering, and so on. Now, before proceeding, think about what this means. If you're around somebody who lies, somebody who cheats, someone who mistreats others, somebody who malingers, and so on, then it's likely that there is some issue having to do with the helping or harming notions that live in their lives. So here's the idea. Bad attitudes prevent peace and precede bad choices. When we do something wrong or hurt someone, we usually find that our actions have been preceded by what we think. As suggested earlier, these attitudes develop because we justify our refusal to help when the choice is presented. For instance, you might have an opportunity to help your spouse or a friend. When you choose not to, you might think to yourself, I deserve more than I'm getting, and he or she should help me. Or you might think, I am just a bad person, worse than, and nothing I do will matter. Or you could think, I am better than them, and I don't need to be of help to them. You might be able to see yourself in any of these 4 bad attitudes which follow. Further, as you learn about these attitudes, you might be able to see them in someone in your business. Please remember, these are attitudes which typically exist before and are often used to justify bad things. So, for example, let's suppose you believe you are better than, or you are around somebody who believes that he or she is better than others. Then they will view themselves as superior, virtuous, and right. They will view others as inferior, false, wrong, and incapable. Their feelings will be impatient, disdainful, and indifferent. And their view of the world will be competitive, troubled, and the world needs me. Well, what if you're around somebody who believes I'm worse than others? Then their view of themselves is, I'm not as good as others, I'm broken, I'm deficient, and I'm fated to be this way. Their view of other people are advantaged, privileged, and blessed. Their feelings often are helpless, jealous, and depressed. And their view of the world is hard, difficult, it's against me, and ignores me. Now pay attention to those, and these attitudes will give you the substance you need to help bring a person from some difficulty to a position where they can better participate in peace. Now let's suppose that an individual has one of these bad attitudes and he believes that he must be seen a certain way. Well, his view of himself will need to be well thought of, and will fake others. His view of others will be judgmental, threatening, and he'll see others as his audience to perform. His feelings will be anxious, afraid, needy, stressed, and overwhelmed, and the view of the world dangerous, watching, and judging. What about the negative attitude that I deserve something? Well, when a person believes they deserve and will even use those words, the view of themselves includes that they're meritorious, mistreated, unappreciated. View of others includes mistaken, mistreating, ungrateful. Their feelings include being entitled, deprived, resentful, and their view of the world unfair, unjust, and owes me. Now, please remember that these 4 attitudes have been taken from the book, The Anatomy of Peace, authored by the Arbinger Institute in 2006. So now what do you do to create inner peace? When the ebb and flow of life, we may make choices which do not represent the truth we know about ourselves. This truth is the highest or best thing within us, or it is a clear appreciation that we are not as prepared as we would like to be. When we choose to deny and betray ourselves, we are also often less willing to help others or do the difficult but right things we should do for ourselves. We feel inner conflict, which in turn creates destructive emotions, taxes our health, and reduces our enthusiasm for work and for life. Quite often, we blame others. We seek to leave the situation and or otherwise justify and defend ourselves rather than find the real solution. This requires that we face the truth about ourselves and then do something to make things go right. So to create inner peace, you could take the following steps. You would do this as a leader who wants to improve his or her ability to create peace in others. So first of all, identify which of the 4 perspectives, attitudes you're currently using to justify yourself. Eliminate labels, judgments, and stereotypes which make you an object of your own thoughts. Pay more attention to the constructive things you know to be true about yourself. Accurately identify what you do to betray yourself and begin to honestly face what you do and accept responsibility for it. Begin taking one step at a time to act more consistently with what you believe to be true about yourself. Just take a minute and write 5 things that are true, positively true about yourself, and make a list and read them every day. Now start responding to others by treating them as people instead of objects. You can take time to ask questions and listen, to pay attention to what others think and feel. In fact, you could learn to make listening and asking questions your reflex instead of telling, shouting, instructing, or complaining. You might also, in this process, learn what motivates and interests people. Next, you can commit yourself to help rather than ignore or harm people. This is the basic orientation toward others you work with, live with, or which many people you encounter along the way. If you're the leader, you can do a lot of things to ask people to contribute or help others. Next, you could teach someone these attitudes so that you can learn by the act of teaching, and then you can work to resolve any current conflict you have with other people. Now, let's suppose your challenge next is to create peace with others. You have to learn more on getting things to go right than you focus on trying to stop what is going wrong. Now, I'm going to repeat that. Quite often, we are misled by childhood mystery. It's a mystery why parents get involved with this. If a child has a conflict, they somehow want to know who caused it or why did this happen. Actually, when you try to resolve peace, we care far less about that most of the time than taking a look at the situation as it exists now and start getting people to work on getting things right, rather than focus on who caused it or what the problem is. As you might expect, there is a fairly close tie between inner peace and your ability to resolve conflict or achieve peace with others. To achieve inner peace and peace with others, it is important to begin with a certain goal in mind. This goal is to focus on making things turn out right and make that more important than to stop what is going wrong. There's an important reason for this. In many situations when there is no peace, one or more parties try to end the conflict by focus on solving the problems. If that is all that is done, attempts to solve problems may lead to a more elaborate form of the problem instead. That is, if we're trying to solve who causes it and try to eliminate it. Fear-based strategies tend to compound the problem. And if this is followed by more attempts to solve what is wrong, the problems you have will likely last a long time and they might be getting bigger and bigger. Now see how you're doing. Examine whether you're motivated by one or more of the 4 attitudes. For instance, do you need to be seen in a certain way? Do you believe you deserve something? Do you think of yourself as worse than someone or worse than a group of people? And or do you think of yourself as better than others? And then ask yourself, is peace better for me than continuing to live with these attitudes? If it is, then do the following. Begin by treating other people as people or a person instead of an object. Imagine what this person thinks or feels. It's empathy. And to get things started, you may want to show you assume responsibility for self by issuing an apology for what you may have done to contribute to the conflict. Do this without blaming or accusing the other person. You could also identify which of the 4 bad attitudes you feel when it comes to this person. Then listen carefully to understand what perspective a person uses to justify himself. You can do this by asking questions showing that you wish to understand how the other person views himself, views others, views the world, and how this person feels. Then you could identify what positive conditions need to exist as a solution and suggest that you and this person move toward that rather than simply focus on what is wrong and try to solve that. Improve your relationship by doing something with this person or offering to help or offer to provide help to this person. Ensure that you continue to communicate that you see this person as a person rather than an object, and then spend time responding helpfully to others whose influence or help you desire in your efforts to create peace with other people. It is well past time for more people and more leaders to learn how to produce peace and to value it. I hope you will think about the attitudes, think about the 4 perspectives that you have, and look at yourself and see if you have inner peace and see if you're developing the skills to bring peace to the people you work with and associate with.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Do What Matters Most, which is sponsored by FirstAnswers.com, where you can find new tools for families and parents of 21st century kids with a focus on emotional self-reliance. Visit FirstAnswers.com to sign up for a free newsletter. Find Do What Matters Most on Facebook and our website, mattersmostmedia.org, where you can ask Dr. Scoresby your own questions. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Give us a rating and write a review on the podcast app or Google Podcasts and let us know what you think about Do What Matters Most.